Hey Kool-Aids, I know you're disappointed. I'm pretty bummed too. After the big summer that Barcelona had to be top of the Liga table, and yet to feel like your entire season comes down to one game, you don't get the result, and it happens in the beginning of October, it's beyond deflating. So I think for the tactical stuff, which I think for some people that's why you come here, but we will have some of that on the podcast. I'll talk about that more later in the week when we look ahead to Celta de Vigo and Inter Milan match next week. But today, I think it's a lot about the big picture. So here they are, the 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 loss to Inter Milan in the Champions League group stage. One is not the end yet. Let me start this match review from a position that I haven't really heard too much from. As much as I am seeing a lot of the sky is falling, Xavi needs to wipe the slate clean and completely start this thing over and really evaluate how this team is playing, I'm not entirely sure about that. I think this is coming down to this match in particular. If Barcelona get a 1-0 result, we'll talk about the handball in a second, but if one of those calls goes their way, or something happens and goes Barca's way, they make their own luck, and this ends 1-1, then we're not asking those same big questions. So I think the way that Barcelona approached this match and the way it all played out is unfortunate. It's really negative because of the bigger picture of what it means. We're talking about 90 minutes deciding whether or not you're playing in the Europa League, and that's what you're feeling. But I think that's a bit different from the actual football that was played on the field. And that actual football is why I'm not to say positive about next week, but there is some optimism. And let me reword that again. I think there's at least some hope. Let's end there. There is some hope. Because Barcelona next week at a Spotify Camp Nou, if they do enter in 2-0 or 3-0, then it's them who has their head above water, and it's them who's going to move on to the knockout stages. This is a setback for sure. I'm not trying to downplay that. But the Champions League group of death that they would put into, this is a situation. You beat Inter at your own home, and then you beat Bayern Munich at your own home. I mean, just because it's Bayern Munich doesn't mean that that match is just an L for Barcelona. Why should it guaranteed to be a loss? If anything, if you're in that locker room tonight with Xavi, you think Xavi's going to tell these players, well, I guess that's it, boys. I think that's it. Because Bayern Munich, we know what they're going to do to us at our own home, in our own cathedral. I don't think you can sit here, and even if you believe that's going to happen, again, I'm not optimistic about it, but I'm optimistic enough to say that there's going to be some fight. I think that this isn't just straightforward. It feels like in Europe over the last few seasons that A to B, Barcelona were definitely going to fail in a myriad of different ways. And while this does feel like a setback, like a failure, it's not the end just yet. Because you look at the way that Barcelona are playing in other matches. Yes, the Bayern Munich match was a bit of a dud. Yeah, they didn't play well against Mallorca. But they conceded just 1 goal in the Liga this season. And unfortunately in the Champions League, it's 4 goals in 3 matches, and 2 of those have been losses. So yes, I understand the negativity in the Champions League, because that's obviously where Barcelona's nightmares always seem to take place. And just like you, again, I'm trying to have a little bit of hope, because I remind you, from this chair, from where I sit, I don't want people to be tuning out. I don't want my viewer count to go down and people to stop caring or leaving all these negative comments down in the comment section below for 10 months. I mean, that's what it's going to be, because we have to wait for this moment before Barcelona can get rid of these demons again in 9 and 10 months. And that's exhausting to me to consider. Barcelona played twice a week this month, and I want to focus on those. I want to focus on the Liga table. I want to focus on those matches and focus on the Champions League campaign. But it can't happen if Barca don't get a result next week. But just like you, I hope they're doing it for Kool-Aids in general. I hope they can do it for Kool-Aids, and that's why I say it's not the end just yet. I want to thank OneFootball for sponsoring this video. OneFootball is the app that I use to stay up to date on everything FC Barcelona. But more importantly, because you know I'm watching every minute of Barcelona action, it does help me stay up to date with all the teams that Alemany might be scouting and looking at players for the next big transfer window. With a custom tailored homepage, stay up to date with breaking news, live scores, and even transfer news. While on the go, you can check with matches in live time and watch those La Liga highlights afterwards. And especially if you're in a place defending the good name of the Liga against other teams. Say in the UK and Ireland, you can watch the Liga highlights on the go and let them know that it's not just Real Madrid and Barcelona, regardless of what the table says. So use a link down in the description below for a free download of the OneFootball app on Android or iOS to put all your football in one place. And they also help out a tiny Barca channel like this one too. Thanks again to OneFootball. Now back to all things FC Barcelona. 2 is VAR the Protagonist. I don't like to get into conspiracy theories and all that stuff, but boy, PSG, UEFA, this decision, I'll just say it doesn't look good. I don't believe the conspiracy theories. As I always say throughout a lot of different matches, that Barcelona had many chances to be on the front foot. They have many chances to get the ball in the back of the net. But I think unlike a lot of when you hear me say those arguments, especially in the Liga matches, you've heard it over the years when they fail to get a result against Cadiz or Adafe or Elche. I think those are basically the matches where you've heard excuses. I'm trying to use my memory here over the last 2 or 3 years for me in these match reviews. But in the Champions League, you get moments. You get one tick of the clock. You get this one singular opportunity. So if those calls don't go your way and those decisions don't go your way, you're not going to get the results. That's a lot of money on the line. That's a big result on the line, and it's everything in a season. And especially in games where when VAR plays such a major role, you're going to feel hard done by. The Pedri goal that was called offside because of Ansu's touch, fine, I get it. The Eric Garcia handball nullified by the offside, that's correct as well. But Denzel Dumfries' arm changed the trajectory of the ball, and that is a handball in stoppage time. A handball. That third angle that they showed was clear and obvious enough to overturn it, and I think unfortunately sometimes the moment dictates decisions for even referees. I think if they look at that in the first half of this match, it's a penalty 10 out of 10 times. That's a penalty. And in the first half, it matters. But in stoppage time of this kind of game, the referees and the VAR and whoever is calling them from high up above is not going to let this match be decided in stoppage time in this manner. It's too big of a call for them to overturn it. And clear and obvious, if it's clear and obvious in the first half, it should be clear and obvious in the second half in stoppage time. And I think that's really what we're arguing here when it comes to the VAR parts of this. That window of clear and obvious gets harder and harder and harder to overturn the later you get in a match. And unfortunately for Barcelona, their clear and obvious decision that needed to be overturned came in stoppage time. And again, I think if it happens in another moment in the match, this isn't conspiracy. I'm saying that I think that they get the call in the first half. And I not say that I'm defending the referees, maybe it is all just conspiracy, but I think I'm trying to understand what went wrong in that VAR booth on a call that definitely should have been overturned. And that is one more reason I have just an ounce of hope in me. That this game was, for all intents and purposes, decided by VAR. A draw on the road against Inter was going to feel like a win, because that means you could go back to the Spotify Camp Nou, get your win, and then get out of the group stage. But because VAR did truly help to decide this match, I have a little bit of faith that Barcelona can create their own luck at home, put the ball in the net, pass Inter, not once, not twice, maybe 3 times, and then walk on to the group stage under their own merit. 3 is Dembele's heavy shoulders. I'm seeing a lot of people try to scapegoat Dembele here. I'm hearing a lot of, well, it was on him, and he doesn't have a football brain, it's erratic, all these different things. But you have to understand both sides of the coin here. If you're going to say that Barcelona didn't get a result because of Dembele tonight, then you have to understand that if Barcelona did get a result in this game, that it was going to come on Dembele's shoulders too. He was either going to be the hero, or I guess this proves why you're making him the villain. So much of this was on his shoulders. He's constantly seeing double teams. It's not a defense of the fact that he couldn't help break through, but even if Barca did, look, when Pedri's goal goes in that's called offside, whose foot does that come off of? There were 50 crosses in this game. And one of the crosses that Dembele puts in, that's the one that Barca manages to get into the back of the net. And I don't think he was erratic in this game. If you watch Barca, you have a general idea of where he was going to go next with much of what he did. He had 2 silly giveaways, but so did Pedri. Lewandowski was played really well by De Vrij and Skriniar, and he wasn't finding the space for near-post runs. And Gavi doesn't create through the middle enough for the other team to ever double-team him in that half space. So that means Dembele largely has to figure it out kind of on his own. The only thing you can say about Dembele is that he probably should have been on the left, and that's not really his decision, so that Rafinha could have been on the right, because that certainly wasn't working for the Brazilian on the left. He was getting lost in the middle, whether it was him and Alonso not having a good understanding of each other, they never really played together before, or just not being comfortable with the lack of space he had to work in. There has to be a way to get him more involved next week, and he has to be more involved. And I understand wanting to get the best out of Dembele and have him play where he is most destructive, but you've got to get something out of Rafinha. I trade some of Dembele on that side for some of Rafinha and some of Dembele on the other side. And if you don't think you're going to get that out of Rafinha, then Ansu has to start from the jump. 4 is Marcos Alonso and Sergio Roberto won't beat you. I think there is certainly 2 different ways to go about how you scapegoat or how you start to blame or which players you look to swap out for next week even so that Barcelona can get some kind of result. And I think Marcos Alonso and Sergio Roberto are kind of on that scapegoat list, if you will. But I think the sentiment about Marcos Alonso is kind of true. That if Barcelona aren't creating in the middle and all the attention is out on the wings, Marcos Alonso, as Chelsea fans kind of warned us, is not going to beat you. There was a lot of moments when he was alone on the left side. Either the cross was undercut, overcooked, or he can't obviously get around the defender to try to curl one back in or put it back diagonally into the path of an on-rushing attacker. Whatever it is, Barcelona weren't dynamic enough in that final third, and part of the delivery from the fullbacks is a huge part of that. But in a little bit of defense of Alonso, as much as I said that first part, Balde was better in the second half, but Balde was also better in the second half because Ansu was more dynamic than Rafinha. That's reason one. Reason two is that Barca were pushing later in the game, and again, that's not on Alonso. But Balde does need to be the starter next week because he can get around Inter a bit better. Alonso's options were consistently to try a short cross, and whether he's still a bit rusty from not playing much or what, he, as I said, overcooked a few crosses that Balde or Alba definitely would have done better on. Maybe not all three of them, but at least one of them. And once again, in the Champions League, you're talking about a few moments. And 50 total crosses for Barcelona not to be able to do something with one of them. They completed just 11 of the 50. That's not good enough against Inter Milan. On the other side, a similar story with Roberto. Barcelona have got to have a better answer than just have Roberto continue to recycle possession. I totally understand, though, that he also can't overlap with Dembele, because again, if Roberto is stuck out there on the right wing and Dembele loses the ball inside, you've got way too much space that the other team, and Inter's a good counterattacking team, you've got too much space in behind, and you're going to get beat that way. And it's this weird experiment where we know that Barcelona need an upgrade at that position when it comes to Roberto. But think about the match he played. 102 passes of 107. I think that Araujo and Koundé had the exact same match, and we don't come out of this with the same arguments about Roberto kind of needing to be upgraded. So I think for Barcelona, solving that fullback issue that they currently have, yeah, their fullbacks need to just put the ball on the heads of attackers, but Barcelona also didn't have that many guys crashing into the penalty box. A lot of it was Lewandowski, and the service to him in the air wasn't good enough. Again, credit to Skriniar and De Vrij. They wrapped him up pretty well. He constantly dealt with the double team all night long. So I think this is one of those for Xavi, more than is even Roberto and Alonso need to be better. Yeah, they need to be a little bit better, but Xavi needs to figure out how to better utilize these crosses into the box and make more of them. Because as you hear me talking about, a lot of the focus is on the wings. Dembele, Rafinha, Roberto, Alonso, those four kind of dictated this match. But a lot of that is because not enough comes through the middle. Pedri and Gabi and Lewandowski, you kind of wonder where they were. And I'm not blaming them necessarily. I think Pedri actually played decently well. He was really good on the press as always. And there's, again, nothing Gabi did truly wrong. But they weren't dynamic enough. They didn't create enough. And Lewandowski certainly didn't get enough service. So I'm not sure how to create a better partnership between that trio in the middle of the field. Like that triangle, look at the way Bayern Munich play with Thomas Muller in that area. That triangle is some of the more adventurous and important, significant spots on the field for Bayern Munich's attack, and that's how they create the goals that they do. And while Barcelona don't necessarily create that way, again, they use their wings a lot. They use the magic of Dembele. That's why so much is on his shoulders. I think Xavi's going to have to figure something out when it comes to getting more service to Lewandowski in better positions. So that does leave us to 5, which is different approach needed. I've been talking a lot about the questions that I think, and I know that Xavi's going to be asking himself heading into the weekend, heading into next week, and looking at this season in the big picture, because even if Barcelona were to not get a result next week and drop down in the Europa League, you still have all these matches left to play, and he's going to have an entire month during the World Cup to mull it all over and really consider things. So I'm wondering if he's not even just trying to survive this month with all the injuries and get to next month, but you have to get a result against Inter Milan, or also the rest of it doesn't matter, which I'll keep harping on. That's why our hearts hurt. Totally get it. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page there. But as far as a different approach, Xavi's going to have to switch something up in a way that Inzaghi isn't. Because unfortunately, as I told you in that Inter Milan preview, they managed to score in one of the 3 ways that I kind of warned that they were going to score. The breakthrough comes from Tanalau from deep on a shot. It was either going to be him from distance or him from a set piece, or a cross into the forwards for Lautaro, Correa, or Dzeko to do something very quickly with, because they don't create much on their own. So that was one of the questions in the wrinkle that Inzaghi was able to do. He had Correa kind of running onto the ball, as opposed to Dzeko being another forward just holding it up. And I thought Xavi, by not starting PK and starting Eric Garcia, countered that and kind of got his lineup right. So I think Xavi dealt with that wrinkle rather well. For Barcelona, do they have a similar wrinkle? As I said, there's something that they can do. I think there are some pretty easy things, right? Add dynamism with Balde instead of Alonso on that left side, and then you switch Dembele and Rafinha, and that, as I said, might be enough to get things done next week. Well, there is still a match to be played, Celta de Vigo. There's still plenty of podcasts, too many podcasts, I feel like, before that return match against Inter Milan. I just kind of want it to happen now and get it over with. But I hope I gave you some positivity, some hope about what could happen for Barca next week. But if you're sad, if you're bummed, if you just want to leave a negative comment below, I totally understand. But we're here with you throughout the season, I promise. Okay, until next time, Forza Barca.